We're talking about the Canadian Emergency Business Account. This is the $40,000, the initial one, the loan that was made available to businesses that were trying to keep their heads above water through the pandemic. January 18th is that repayment deadline, and a lot of business owners, I think, are realizing that that's an obligation they're not going to be able to meet.
We pulled our Alberta Business community just prior to Christmas, so we've been doing a bunch of advocacy on this file simply because we're hearing anecdotally of a lot of businesses that are closing their doors. We just heard about another one in a small rural town that was quite successful that decided as of January 1st that they're done because they can't repay this loan. So prior to Christmas, we did write to Minister Freeland again in conjunction with several of our other territorial chamber collaborators and let them know that, this is definitely still an issue. We did a hot button survey through our Alberta Perspectives research that shows that 41% in Alberta, so we had over 500 respondents, and 41% of those say that they are not going to be able to repay by the deadline. So we know this is an incredibly impactful position right now for a lot of businesses to be in, because we don't know after January 18th what the landscape is going to look like for the province if we're not able to do something to extend these deadlines. And it's critical. We're in the final days, and we've been advocating for over the last year to see these deadlines moved out and moved a little bit farther into the horizon. Realistically, it's not all businesses. Obviously, some have been able to repay it and have not had any challenges. But it's very industry specific too, that there are several industries that have been impacted much harder and have had a much tougher time recovering. And those are the ones that we're really worried about.
Can we talk about what those are, like in particular, the specific industries? Are there details you can share with us people might find interesting?
Yeah, for sure. The hospitality, accommodation, travel, tourism, all of the ones that were so gravely impacted during COVID in terms of being able to even, a lot of businesses were able to pivot and look at different business models, selling online, those types of things. Those industries had nowhere to go and had no way to recoup costs in terms of their operations. So those would be some right off the top of my head that I know have been impacted much more heavily than others.
And to state the obvious here, the cost of borrowing has skyrocketed. It doesn't matter the context of what you're talking about. Borrowing costs are up. In many instances, triple, quadruple what they would have been around the time that people would have taken this assistance, accepted or applied for this assistance in the first place. What do you know about people that have been looking to finance this obligation? How many are able to find the financing, and how many are still left unsure of what they're going to do moving forward?
Again, there's many, as high as, like I said, 41% saying that they're not going to be able to refinance. So that's a significant number of businesses that have not been able to find the refinancing. We're also hearing about, it was supposed to be refinanced at 5%, and we're hearing stories of businesses that that interest rate is much higher, to your point. So it's really a matter of how do we support our businesses, and how can we take a look at, from a financial institution perspective, how can we find alternative or better ways to ensure that we can make sure these businesses stay viable and are able to borrow the money that they need to repay this loan. And unfortunately, like I said, it's 10 days away, really. And so those businesses that are struggling are, 10 days is not a long time to try and find refinancing.
Yeah.
If they're struggling to find it at this point.
No kidding. So you basically have an emergency meeting coming up this week with Alberta's finance minister. Yeah. Without showing us all your cards, can you, or maybe in addition to what you've already shared with us, can you tell us what you'll be saying directly to Minister Horner when you sit down?
Yeah, so there's a couple things we need to talk to him about. So there was the CEBA loan, but there was also the RRF loan, which was the Regional Relief and Recovery Fund loan. Those ones were distributed through Community Futures federally, and they're not being recognized the same way that the CEBA loans are. So that's one of the things we'll be talking about in terms of, how can we get our financial institutions to recognize those equally is one of the things. The other thing is, again, the 5% refinancing interest amount, which is really, really important. And then just, speak with the minister about, is there anything provincially that could be done to potentially support these businesses? And I say that, completely acknowledging that this is a federal liability, not a provincial one. But it doesn't hurt to have the conversation and see if there aren't ways provincially that we can be looking at supporting some of these highly impacted businesses.